Welcome to Global Technology 5173. Where are we now? What time is it now? Fall 2013. And believe it or not, we are coming to the end of our semester. It has been a wonderful semester, I hope. And today is no less, even maybe the best day in the class. Now, this is your day. How about that? This is your day. When I point at you, say big shine. This is your day. Shine. Excellent.
All right, thank you. Our group, Group 1, the 5-person group, we're going to talk about genetically engineered corn. Genetically engineered foods is kind of a broad subject. We tried to narrow it down on corn, but in reality, in order to talk about genetically modified corn, we also have to look at some other genetically modified foods as well. We're living in unique times right now. Right now we have the ability to use technology in ways that it hasn't been used before to manipulate the foods that we have in order to provide better crops, more healthy crops, as well as even infuse vitamins into the food that we eat. But nothing comes without a price. There is a cost to this, to utilizing this technology, and in a lot of circles, in a lot of places in the world, this has become a very controversial subject. Some countries even outlawing the use of it completely. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an overlook on the technology itself, and then we're going to talk about some of the ethical factors, and then wrap it up.
I'm going to focus on the history of GM corn. Genetic modification has been used throughout history in its simplest form, just keeping the best seeds to plant the next year. Breeding and cross-breeding plants in order to get better flavor, better sized products, crops, longer lasting products, higher yields, to create new varieties. All of this is genetic modification. But genetic engineering is something different. It is transferring specific genes, not thousands of genes, and transferring them even between unrelated species. This can create what they call transgenic organisms, and they do this to help farmers with perennial problems, to help them fight weeds, to fight insects, to fight disease. Bacillus thuringiensis is a soil bacterium that was discovered way back in 1901 by a Japanese biologist who was studying what was causing silkworms to die. It was rediscovered again in 1911 by another scientist, and again in 1915 that scientist noted that there was a crystal in the BT, and that crystal would later be very significant in genetic engineering. BT began being used as a pesticide in 1920, but there were some drawbacks from applying it topically. It got washed away by rain, it got degraded by the sun's rays, it only affected certain insects, and if the insects were inside the plant or underground, then they weren't affected by this pesticide. So it was researched in more depth starting in 1956 when they found that that crystal inside the BT was what had the most effect on the insects. In 1961, it was registered with the EPA as a pesticide, and before 1977, there were only 13 specific strands of BT known, and it only affected moth larvae. In 1977, they identified some strands that affected flies, and in 1983, they identified some strands that affected beetles. In the 1980s, there were some concerns over the man-made pesticides because they weren't as effective anymore, and there was also concern over their impact on the environment. So BT, since it's organic and less harmful to the earth and only affects certain insects, they decided to put more money into further research. And after that extended research, thousands of strands of BT were identified, and each had distinct toxic crystals in their DNA. So at that point, the race was on to be the first company to be the first ones to sell a brand of GM corn. Ciba Geigy Mycogen was one company, Monsanto DeKalb was another company, and Monsanto was the one that owned the patents for technology, and there were lots of lawsuits involving patent infringement. The first GE corn was registered with the APA in 1995. The first company to sell it, the one that won the race, was Ciba Geigy and Mycogen back in 1996. Shortly after that, in 97, Yield Guard was sold by Monsanto DeKalb, and they also sold a hybrid corn that was resistant to the Roundup pesticide, which killed weeds, but not the corn. There also was another company, Adventist Crop Science, and they had their own hybrid called Starlink, but the EPA had concerns about Starlink because they thought it might cause an allergic response. So there was an agreement in '98 that they wouldn't use this for humans. They would only use it for animals and industry. But it got out. It was found in some taco shells and corn chips in 2000, and so there was a recall, even though there weren't any reported cases of an allergic response. Finally, the way this corn works is the insect bites it, their digestive tract is attacked, and the insect dies within days. In 1996, 1% of the U.S. corn was GE corn. In 2000, 25% of it was, and most recently in 2011, we're up to 88% of our corn.
All right, so now I'm going to talk about the explanation of GM corn. So what is GM, which is genetically modified? And genetically modified foods are food plants that have been genetically altered by the addition of foreign genes to enhance a desired trait. And the purpose of it is it allows plants to inherit traits much faster and more accurately, and it also ensures the plant can be herbicide tolerant and insect tolerant, which means it kills weeds and plants, in case you didn't know that. GM corn is modified by Bt, which is what Nicole talked about earlier. And the Bt gene is used to produce a protein that kills larvae, which she also mentioned earlier. I found a 6-step process of how corn specifically is genetically modified. There are 6 steps, which are extraction, integration, multiplying, copying, spraying, and then the results. And there's just a graphic to show it all, but I'm going to break it down step by step for you. So step 1 is extraction. This is the first step in which a gene with a required characteristic is extracted from the bacteria. And you can see from the image right there, it's being cut. So step 1. Step 2 is integration, and in the second step, the gene is integrated into the DNA of another bacterium, which you can see the red gene from another is integrated. In the third step, it's called multiplying, and it's kind of self-explanatory. The gene is multiplied, which you can see there's 3 now instead of 1. Step 4 is when the gene is made into copies, and then the copies are fixed into the microparticles. The 5th step is spraying, and it's when the cell chromosomes are integrated and the microparticles are sprayed into the cells. Once again, you can kind of see how it works there. And step 6 are the results, which is pretty much the final product. It's when the corn is grown and has the ability to resist the insects and herbicides. According to WebMD, 60 to 70% of processed foods that are sold in grocery stores have a genetically modified ingredients or have GM ingredients. Some items that contain ingredients of GM corn, which is one of the most widely grown crops. So this is just one statistic, obviously. I know that they have a few more, and it kind of raises the question about, is GM corn safe for human consumption or not?
Wait. I got it. All right, I'm going to talk about the current status of GM corn. As Brad mentioned, it's a very controversial topic to the point where there are some countries and states that are now banning it. Mexico actually placed a ban on GM corn in 2013 of October this year. The Mexican federal judge stated that the reason for the ban was the imminent harm to the environment and to the people. And they also banned transnationals from releasing the transgenic corn in the Mexican countryside. And also, there are collective action lawsuits moving through the system about GM corn. In addition to Mexico, Hawaii has also implemented a ban. Well, they're pushing for a ban right now. The Big Island of Hawaii County Council Committee passed a prohibition bill, and there's a vote of 6-2. If this bill is adopted, all open-air cultivation of GMOs will be banned, with the exception of papaya. And recently, in 2012, there was a study done in France in which there were two groups. There were rats that were fed with Monsanto's GM corns, and then there was a control group that were fed normal corn. The rats with the GM corn developed tumors and also suffered from severe liver and kidney damage, and they died earlier than the control group. The NK603 corn, which is a Monsanto corn, is a variety of seed modified to withstand Monsanto's Roundup weed killer. And this corn is approved for consumption in the US, Europe, and other countries. So the rats were observed for 2 years, which is typically a lifespan of a rat. 50% male and 70% females that were given the GM corn died prematurely, in contrast with 30% male and 20% female of the control group. And this research received wide media coverage, which energized opponents of GM food. And the French Prime Minister, Jean Ayrault, not French, said that if the results are confirmed, the government will press for a Europe-wide ban on the maize. And of course, there's always two sides to the story. So now there's opponents of the findings. Some scientists oppose the findings, like the European Food Safety Authority said that the design, reporting, and analysis of the study outlined in the paper was inadequate and insufficient scientific quality needed to be considered for valid risk of assessment. So who knows, but yeah. And in 2003, President Obama passed a bill which gave provisions to Monsanto and other manufacturers of GM seeds for federal courts. And the provision was removed from the bill in September 2013 by Senator Barbara Mikulski, who introduced an amendment to change the language of the bill. Now Brad is going to talk about the ethical issues.
Ethical issues of genetically modified foods. We can go both sides of this, the ethical issues, and we're going to talk about the ethical issues in doing it, and we're also going to talk about the ethical issues in not doing it as well. These are the issues that really people stand out when they talk about the ethical issues. The use of herbicides, pesticides, world hunger, the environmental issues, and the bottom one is something most people don't think about when you're talking about the ethical issues of your food, and that's the religious issues. We're going to talk about those also. Would having genetically modified seeds to reduce the amount of herbicides needed be a good thing? On the surface, we might say that yes, in order to, if we could genetically modify them to reduce the amount of herbicides used and sprayed in the, for lack of a better term, the water system, because as we know, everything that gets put into the earth ends up in the water system. But there's something else you got to look at too. We could be producing superbugs, and with pesticides especially, you end up with insect population which gets resistant to certain pesticides and end up being superbugs, or you end up with, depending on how you genetically modified the plant, in this case corn, you end up with the insects taking on some of those traits which will in essence cause them to be much more resistant to the natural things that should control their populations. World hunger. Here's the other side of the coin we have to look at though too. If we have this power, and we know millions of people all across the globe die of hunger, and if we're able to increase our yields per acre, wouldn't that be a good thing? And if we can do that, shouldn't we do that? Why would we want to sit on this power and sit on this ability to create something good without exercising it? And that is the constant struggle from both sides of the issue. Here in the Philippines, this is one issue right here. 680,000 people die from vitamin A deficiency. Another 250,000 to 500,000 people are blinded annually. These are remote areas of the world, highly populated, developing nations. And they're able to take, the one on the left is called golden rice, and it's vitamin A infused rice. So they're getting a vitamin that they're not getting from other parts of their diet, and it's helping keep people from being blinded, and it's able to keep people alive. Wouldn't that be a good thing to do? Well, that's the argument. Monsanto takes a big hit for this one too. A lot of people blame the death of the honeybees on Monsanto. We're talking about the spraying the herbicides on the earth. A lot of people believe, and it's science is back and forth on this, whether or not Monsanto's to blame for the death of the honeybees, but without the honeybees, there's no pollination. And without the honeybee, we could actually be going backwards. If we're killing off the honeybees, then the food's not going to be pollinated. And I really like this visual, but this is something else they're talking about doing, and that is infusing the food that we eat with certain vaccines. So you don't need to go get shots to get vaccines or to get certain meds. You just naturally get them through the food you eat. Now there's a whole host of ethical considerations in this. Just to start, just to whet the appetite of thought on it would be, what about all the animals, the wildlife that eats these foods also? And as you may or may not know, here in Illinois we grow an enormous amount of corn. An enormous amount of the wildlife population is also eating that corn. Everything from groundhogs to squirrels, raccoons, and deer also help themselves to the farmer's field. And what you'd be doing with your wildlife population is infusing them also with these vaccinations. And here's the religious aspect of this that I want to put out. One of the things they did it with strawberries too, is they want to infuse fish genes into strawberries to keep them more frost resistant. Now, on the surface, some people might say again, well, that'd be good. You'd be able to save your crops. The farmer wouldn't lose a lot of money to an early frost, which does happen. But what about if you're infusing certain, say, pork? Some people have a religious opposition to eating pork, and if the scientists, you put that pork gene into strawberries, apples, whatever, and then the person was doing something that truly is against their religion, and unbeknownst to them, and then they find out later there are religious considerations that have to be taken into consideration, especially when you're crossing animal genes into the vegetables and the fruits that we eat today. I'll turn it over to Darius. I did it again.
All right, I'll be talking about the future of GM corn. As stated earlier from Patrice's slide, the United States has invested in 2013 in Monsanto, which is over the GM, genetic modified corn. GMO have been established in 1996, and up to 2011, there has been a 15 years of increase of 8%. GMO have been known to be virtually everywhere from food supplies, from fruits, vegetables, and meat. This has become more and more of an issue when it comes to fast food restaurants such as McDonald's and stuff like that. It was even in recent news that Gerber and McDonald's actually came under fire with their kids' meal, and Gerber with the baby food, the fruits and stuff. They're actually using more genetically modified reserves. McDonald's was as far as the apples that serve the kids, and Gerber, obviously, their food. What ended up happening was that McDonald's and Gerber decided not to go forth with the GMOs as far as that, if you understand what I just said. The following are a list of countries that have embraced the GMOs, which is the United States, except California counties such as Trinity, Marin, and Mendocino have successfully banned GMOs. But besides that, China, Canada, South America, India, Philippines, and Britain have embraced the GMOs. As previously mentioned, the Big Island of Hawaii Council has passed a GMO prohibition. Actually, this in October 16. And as Mexico judge has banned GMO corn, citing that it possesses an imminent threat. They didn't really go into details as far as the threat, but according to other research, more like developing cancer cells is more prominent. Also the tumors and the kidney damage. So this question is, do science really help people live longer? The rejection of GMOs, according to the article, The Future of GMOs, states that genetic engineering for food crops is over. Genetically engineered crops will be obsolete soon. I don't think it'll be obsolete anytime soon unless people realize the bad side of it, but there are also positives. It's like a 50-50 with it to me. This statement is supposedly supported by the rejection of GMOs from other countries such as Europe and Japan. And it is stated that the United States have lost some money off of the investment that they had invested into GMO. So they might just end up scratching it because of the loss of an investment, which I just stated. Yeah. Conclusion. Did anybody else want to do it? Y'all want me to do it? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. In conclusion, in conclusion, all right. I have to get my thoughts together, I'm sorry. All right, in conclusion, we have stated both the ethical concerns about the GMO corns and the positive and negative. Yeah, the positive and negative, that's the one. The positive and negatives of GMO corns. Now the question is, do you guys believe that it's a positive thing or a negative thing? I'm up the floor. Oh, my bad, sorry. Sure.
First, please give them a hand. Now, we have this microphone. If you have a question, so it will be taped there. So you tell us your question or comment.
Really? I'm afraid now.
Okay. Any other questions? You have a question? Any question here? Any question? I have two questions. First, what is the truth, or if you found anything in your research that says that the companies who are doing, like Monsanto and others, have a release or relief from putting or labeling this food as genetically modified, so they don't have by law to tell people that this is modified? This is one question. And the other side of it, is it true that if anybody dies or have any problems with this food, they cannot sue this company? So it is a double. So here it is.
Okay.
Now we'll spend only 1 minute for questions, so
Yes.
we'll move fast.
All right, to answer your first question, the people of California, they have been voting on it to see if they want to know whether their food possesses GMOs. And what ended up happening, the people of California said no. Now they're trying to do it again because the people of California, I guess, realized that was a stupid decision. And now they're trying to vote on that they want to know if their food are GMOs. The problem is, like, about 90% of the stuff that we eat are GMOs. The second question, can you repeat your second question again?
They are immune to any low suits.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't really prove that because I ate this particular corn, this is why.
Proved, if it is proved, are they immune?
Yeah, they're immune.
The company wouldn't be sued.
I mean, yeah.
Any other responses here? You don't know. So this is one thing to think about. Are you with me? If you like to pursue this, think about there is no law that forces the companies to write on the books that this is genetically modified, so people can know.
That's why they couldn't get sued.
And then if somebody gets killed or die or sick or something, they are immune because they are doing experiments.
It was your choice to eat.
So they have.
Whether or not that you know it was a genetic modified or not, it was still your choice to eat it. You should have did your. They're gonna feel like this. You should have did your research.
So it is back on the shoulders of who eats, because you eat, you chose that. How about that? Sorry?
If it's not labeled, you don't know if it's GMOs.
Yes, if it's not
So
labeled.
That goes into doing. That's what I'm sure. That's what they're gonna say. It goes into doing research on your product. It's like suing McDonald's because you got fat. Like
No, it's not that. It's not
no,
that.
it's kind of like that because you know that this stuff is not good for you. Yeah, I mean it's in your vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. But you should be aware that GMOs is pretty much in every crop.
Question for you. Is genetically modified engineered food the same like food with fats that you eat knowingly? Is it the same thing or no?
There's different levels of genetic modification also, and a lot of people argue it doesn't matter because you're already eating genetically modified foods. But when you take it and you cross certain things, yes, you've modified the food that we eat. But when you take it to the next level and you start infusing it with other things like the vitamins, people might go, well, okay, they can handle that. But once you start moving into crossing putting animal genes in there for certain reasons, there's a curve here on what people, I think, are going to find acceptable. And eventually, I believe that there will be an outcry in that the people want to see how their food is modified, and it should be labeled as such.
Okay. I leave you with a question. Question for you. Mr. Farmer has been always farming for tomatoes for 50 years, he and his parents, and for generation to generation. And their 1 acre, they can get 5 tons of tomatoes per year. Now, comes a company with genetically modified things, and they give him free seeds. And with these free seeds, he can get in 3 months, not 5 tons, but 50 tons per quarter of a year. So his land in a year would do the math, how much he can get out of this. And it's free for the first year and the second year and the third year. But after this, it becomes very expensive. Is this ethical?
I'm sorry, I didn't know he was going to talk.
No,
I didn't know, my bad. They wouldn't do that just because Monsanto kind of cornered the market as far as giving out seeds to farmers.
I'm not talking about Monsanto, it's just a company. Without
No, I'm saying like that'd be the company that would give out seeds. I see what you're saying. It's not ethical, but I mean, if you think it from a business standpoint, I'm making more money.
Okay. Please give them a hand, please. Would you stop the taping for a second, please?